In this lecture, we're going to take a look at how to improve WordPress security when installing WordPress through your control panel. And in my case, it's cPanel. Now, your cPanel may look slightly different, and the reason is that cPanel can be themed. But essentially, if you're using cPanel, the icons and the content are going to be exactly the same. It may just be laid out differently, it may look slightly different. If you're using any other sort of control panel, then essentially you're going to have somewhere in there an icon to install WordPress. Now, you may have Softaculous, which you can see here. You may have Fantastico, or you may even have a separate icon such as this. They're all going to do the same thing. So I'll click on this one here, which is basically just running the WordPress installer from Softaculous. And I'll click on the install button. Now, you get a choice of choosing if it's going to be HTTP, HTTPS, or if you want to have www in front or not have it in front. I'm just going to leave this as it is, but if you want to change it, just click on the drop down and you've got your various options there. With Softaculous, by default, it looks to install it in a subdirectory. Now, I don't want that. I want it to be installed in the root. And what that means is that when anybody goes to, in this case, trashable.info, WordPress will pop up. If you had it in a subdirectory, they would have to go to trashable.info/WP before it would appear. So I've taken it out of there. The database name they have is WP450, which is quite good. Now, you don't need to worry too much about the database name, but I am going to change it to something so that it doesn't indicate that WordPress is at the front. You can call it pretty much whatever you want, really. So let's just call it anything at all. The table prefix. Now, it is important that you change this. And the reason is that WP_ is the standard table prefix for WordPress. So anybody that wants to hack into your site, if they, let's say they wanted to add a new administrator user, and they can do that sort of thing by using SQL injections. So they will know that the table for the users would begin with WP_, so change it. Let's just call it anything at all. Again, it doesn't really matter as long as it's not WP_. So I'll just call it there. I'm going to leave the site name and the site description for just now. I don't want to install multi-user. The admin username, now this is extremely important that you change this. And the reason is that there's an awful lot of WordPress installations out there that use admin or administrator as the default user ID for the administrator. And that is a major mistake, because basically by leaving it admin, what you're doing is you've effectively done half the work for the hacker. I've shown in other lectures in this course how people do brute force attacks on your site, and the starting point for that is to attack the site trying to log in as admin, and then they will just guess the password. Most people's passwords are fairly weak, so if they start with admin and just do a sort of dictionary attack on the most common passwords, there's a very good chance they're going to be able to break into that site. So definitely change this from admin to something else. So again, I'm just going to call this something obscure. For your password, honestly, there's no excuse for having a weak password here. And as you can see, password of pass is bad. This little key next to the password field will generate a random password for you. So if we click on this, that's strong. And you can just keep clicking on it until you get something. Okay, so the most, just a few clicks here, the most we seem to be getting is 60. But that's strong. I mean, quite frankly, look at that password. Do you think anybody's going to guess that in a hurry? I don't doubt it very much. Now, scrolling down towards the end here, I've got a couple of options to install plugins. The Limit Login Attempts plugin and Clef. Now, Clef is something which I personally use, but I'm not going to install it just now. And The limit logins, again, nice plugin, but I'm not going to install that because I use other security plugins which do exactly the same thing. So there's no point in installing that. So the last thing I need to do is just to enter an email address where I'd like the details to be sent to. And then click on the install button. So just to recap, we've removed the default directory. That doesn't improve security in any way, but if you want WordPress installed in the root of your site, then do that. We've changed the database name. That doesn't have a massive impact on the security at all, but changing the table prefix does, because the default for WordPress is WP_, so we've just changed it to something basic there. I mean, quite frankly, if you stick about 6 or 7 characters in there, that's going to be much, much better. I've just got 3, and it's just simply to demonstrate that it's worth changing it. 6 characters would be much better. I've made sure that the admin username is something other than admin or administrator or my name for that fact. I've got a secure, strong password which I've generated from this key here, just by clicking on that. And that's pretty much it. And just by these simple changes, by changing some of the default stuff there, that can make a huge difference to the security of your WordPress installation. So let's click on the install button. And that's WordPress installed. Now, there's one last thing that I need to do, and that is to go to the WordPress admin. So I'm going to log in here. Now I've actually saved the user ID and password. So the first thing I'm going to do is to go to the users, click on all users. Now here's the username that we set up. Now just to show you here, if I click on this to open up the site in a new tab, and we go to the Hello World post, you see here it shows the Hello World post, today's date, and it shows the username that I chose for the admin user. So basically what it's doing is it's exposing to the whole world what the username is for the administrator. And that in itself is a major security leak, because what hackers will do is they will scan your site, they will look to see who's been doing posts, and they will use those names as the usernames for when they attack your site. So again, they'll use that as the starting point and then try and guess the passwords. So what you need to do is to change that so it's displaying something other than that ID. So let's go back to WordPress admin, click on edit, and scroll down, and we'll change the nickname, and I'll just put in Chris. And where it says display name publicly as, I'm just going to choose Chris. So the username is FYT678, but all anybody's ever going to see is the nickname Chris. And that's not something they can log in with. So if they try hacking the sites and trying to break in through brute force with the username of Chris, it's going to get them absolutely nowhere. So let's just update that profile. We'll go back to this page and refresh it. And you see that it now shows Chris.